So I tried to show my dad, bro, and I took it off and I put it back on and did all this weird, bro. I took it off, put it back on.
For me to have to go to a wedding reception, to a repast, is absolutely devastating.
Sometimes, tragedy doesn't announce itself, it just waits for the right moment to break a city's heart. It began as one of those quiet evenings in Pittsburgh when the city seemed to breathe in slow rhythm. The sky hung heavy with a late autumn drizzle, soft light spilling from street lamps that shimmered against the wet pavement. From a distance came the steady hum of traffic, the occasional whistle of a train, and the faint pulse of sirens, familiar sounds in a place that never truly slept. To most, it was just another Saturday, yet beneath that calm exterior, something unseen was already taking shape, small, almost imperceptible decisions that would soon alter the course of several lives. Somewhere in the north side of the city, words were being exchanged, messages sent, and plans made. None of it seemed significant at the time, but by nightfall, Pittsburgh would once again find itself mourning a tragedy it could neither predict nor prevent. Before the headlines, before the police lights, before the chaos that would later spill into a house of worship, there was a young man named John James Hornezes Jr., a son, a brother, a friend, simply trying to find his way in a city that didn't always offer second chances. Those who knew John often said that he had a presence you couldn't ignore. He wasn't loud or boastful, but his energy drew people in. His smile, bright and genuine, carried a warmth that could calm even the most restless hearts. He was easy to love because he loved easily, and that, more than anything, defined him. John grew up on Pittsburgh's north side, surrounded by the ordinary noise of city life, the laughter of kids chasing each other through the park, the rumble of buses, the bounce of a basketball echoing through the evening air. For him, basketball wasn't just recreation, it was a language, a way to express what words sometimes couldn't. On the court at places like the Pittsburgh Project and Urban Impact, he learned discipline, teamwork, and resilience. Every bounce of the ball was a promise to himself that life could be better. Coaches admired his focus, friends admired his loyalty, and his family, they simply adored him. They saw the tenderness behind his quiet nature, the way he always put others first, and how deeply he cared about the people around him. He was the kind of young man who would share his last dollar, stay up late to check on a friend, or walk miles just to make sure someone else got home safely. He wasn't perfect, he made mistakes, just like anyone trying to navigate early adulthood in a tough environment. But through it all, he kept a sense of hope. John wanted stability, a steady job, a peaceful life, maybe a family of his own one day. He believed in better days, and for a while, it seemed like he might actually reach them. That October afternoon carried no warning signs. The sky was gray but calm, the streets alive with the weekend rhythm of cars, chatter, and music spilling from open windows. John was with two friends near the Sunoco gas station on Cedar Avenue, a familiar place where people from the neighborhood often stopped to talk or grab a drink before heading home. The three young men stood by the bus stop, trading jokes and scrolling through their phones, a moment so ordinary it could have belonged to anyone. But in the blink of an eye, that sense of normalcy was shattered. An SUV crept down Cedar Avenue, its tinted windows hiding the faces inside. Witnesses later said it didn't look suspicious at first, just another car passing through. But then, in an instant, the sharp crack of gunfire tore through the air. Panic erupted. The men at the bus stop scattered as bullets whizzed past them, the echo of gunshots bouncing between the buildings. In the chaos, they fired back, desperate and terrified. As glass shattered and metal crumpled, the sound was deafening, a violent symphony of fear and confusion that seemed to last forever. When the smoke cleared, 3 people lay still on the ground. 2 women, Betty Jean Everett and Jacqueline Mahalik, had been caught in the crossfire as they waited for their bus. The third was John James Hornezes Jr., who only minutes earlier had been laughing with his friends beneath the soft gray sky. Within minutes, the street filled with flashing red and blue lights. Police rushed to secure the scene while paramedics knelt beside the victims, their voices urgent as they performed CPR right there on the sidewalk. Neighbors stood frozen behind police tape, their faces pale, their hands pressed to their mouths in disbelief. John was still alive when they lifted him into the ambulance. So were Betty and Jacqueline. For a brief, fragile moment, there was hope, but by the time they reached the hospital, all three had succumbed to their injuries. News of the triple shooting spread quickly, rippling across the city and splashing across every local headline. Another act of senseless violence. Another set of families left to grieve. Another day when Pittsburgh felt just a little heavier. As detectives combed through the evidence, the picture became clearer. This wasn't random. It had started with a feud between the men at the bus stop and the group inside the SUV. No one could say exactly what sparked it that day, but the consequences were irreversible. Within days, police made arrests. 19-year-old Kyron Troutman was taken into custody and charged with homicide in connection with John's death. 21-year-old Charles Jalen Hines, who had also been shot in the leg, faced charges for the deaths of Betty and Jacqueline. For John's family, none of it made sense. Justice didn't ease the ache. The boy they had loved, the one who made everyone laugh, who loved basketball, who dreamed quietly of a better life, was gone, and nothing could fill that void. When the call came, John's mother refused to believe it. She thought there must have been some mistake. Just hours before, he had been alive, maybe joking with friends or planning his next game. The words felt unreal, like they belonged to someone else's tragedy. But reality has a cruel way of settling in. When she finally saw his name on the news, her knees gave out. Her world, once full of noise and laughter, fell silent. John's family remembered him not as the man in the headline, but as the boy they raised, the one who played basketball until dark, teased his siblings at dinner, and always promised his mother that one day he'd make her proud. His death tore a hole through their hearts that words couldn't mend. As they prepared for his funeral, every decision was excruciating. The suit he would wear, the photos to display, the music to play, everything carried meaning. Yet even amid the grief, there was unease. Whispers drifted through the community, quiet talk of anger still lingering after the shooting, of unresolved conflicts that hadn't died with him. Out of caution, the family asked for police presence at the funeral. It was meant to be a simple precaution, nothing more than a way to ensure that John's farewell would be peaceful. But beneath the surface, tension was building. The morning of October 28, 2022, was gray and cold. Inside the Destiny of Faith Church on Brighton Road, the soft hum of gospel music filled the air as mourners began to gather. The scent of flowers mixed with the salt of tears, and the sound of quiet sobbing echoed between the pews. Hundreds of people came to pay their respects, family, friends, neighbors, and even strangers who had only known John's name from the news. The pastor spoke gently about forgiveness, about how pain never truly ends but can be transformed through love and faith. In the front row, John's mother sat with trembling hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her eyes never left the casket. Around her, voices murmured prayers, and for a moment, there was a fragile sense of calm, the kind that exists right before a storm. Outside, a black car idled across the street. Two figures, dressed in dark clothing, stood quietly near the church steps. Their faces were hidden beneath masks, their movements deliberate. They waited as laughter and tears mingled inside the sanctuary, and the choir's soft voices rose in song. No one noticed them at first. No one could have known what was about to happen. Because even as the family prayed for peace, violence was already closing in, ready to strike again, right in the middle of a place meant for healing. It happened in seconds. Just as the pastor began to speak, a noise outside drew heads toward the open doors, a loud pop, sharp and unmistakable. Then another. Panic rippled through the congregation like a current. People gasped, ducked, and rushed for cover. Screams echoed through the church as chaos erupted in what was supposed to be a moment of peace. At first, no one understood what was happening. Some thought it was fireworks, others froze in disbelief. But within moments, the truth became clear. There had been a shooting right outside the church at the funeral of a man who had already died by violence. Witnesses later described it as surreal mothers shielding children, elderly mourners crawling beneath pews, and men shouting for everyone to stay down. Police officers who had been stationed nearby rushed inside, guiding people toward exits and shouting for calm. The sound of sirens grew louder. filling the air with the grim reminder that tragedy had returned to the very place meant for healing. Outside, the parking lot was chaos, shattered glass, overturned chairs, and flashes of blue and red lights cutting through the gray sky. A man lay injured near the steps of the church, attended by paramedics who moved with desperate urgency. In the hours that followed, the scene would be replayed across news broadcasts and social media, a shocking, almost unthinkable moment, violence invading the sacred ground of mourning. Detectives worked around the clock to piece together what had happened. Surveillance footage was pulled from nearby buildings, and witnesses were questioned one by one. Slowly, a picture began to emerge of tensions that hadn't died with John, of disputes that had continued to simmer in the days after his passing. Authorities confirmed that the shooting at the funeral was not random. It was the latest eruption in a long chain of conflicts, each one feeding into the next. Retaliation, one officer said quietly to a reporter. It's always retaliation. Meanwhile, the community waited for answers. For John's family, grief now came in waves, mourning their son while reliving the horror of that day. "We were there to lay him to rest," his aunt told local media, "and instead, we were running for our lives." The church, once a place of safety, had become a haunting reminder of the violence that refused to stop.
Standing in the vestibule, and when you turn around, you see the whole front of the church. And you see these people running with these weapons, shooting at other young men.
Weeks later, when the police tape had been removed and the reporters had moved on, the echoes of that day still lingered. People spoke in hushed tones about what they had witnessed, how quickly calm could turn to chaos, how grief had been interrupted by fear. Community meetings were held, calling for stronger intervention, mentorship programs, and neighborhood peace walks. Pastors preached about forgiveness, unity, and the need to break the cycle. But beneath every speech was a quiet exhaustion, the shared weight of too many names, too many candles lit in memory of the fallen. John James Hornezes Jr. was remembered not just for the tragedy of his death, but for the reminder his story brought, that life is fragile, and peace, even when found, must be fiercely protected. Months later, as spring began to warm the city again, John's family gathered privately at the cemetery. The grass had grown over the earth where he rested, and the flowers they laid were bright against the gray stone. His mother stood silently for a long time before whispering a prayer not just for her son, but for every mother still waiting for their child to come home. The city continued on, trains still passed in the distance, lights still flickered over wet streets, and life moved forward. Yet for those who had been there, that quiet November day would never fade from memory. Because sometimes, tragedy doesn't just happen, it stays echoing in the hearts of those left behind, reminding everyone that peace is never promised, but always worth fighting for. As the candles burned out and the headlines faded, one truth still remained: peace isn't something we wait for, it's something we have to build, together. If John's story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Let his name remind us why every life matters and why silence in the face of violence can never be an option. And if you want to understand more stories like this, the ones that reveal the hearts behind the headlines, stay with us. Because the next story might just change how you see everything.